If you hate oil stains but love your BMW, this one's for you. Owning a BMW is a joy, but dealing with oil leaks can be a real headache. Today we're going to walk you through the process of identifying and fixing common oil leaks in your BMW. Whether you're a seasoned DIYer or a beginner, this guide will help you keep your car in top shape and your driveway clean. Oil leaks in BMWs are a pain, and they can be caused by a variety of issues. The most common culprits are the valve cover gasket, the oil filter housing gasket, and the timing chain cover gasket. Each of these components plays a crucial role in keeping your engine oil where it belongs, and when they fail, they can cause significant leaks. But you don't need a mechanic to handle them. With a little bit of knowledge and the right tools, you can tackle these repairs yourself. Not only will you save money, but you'll also gain a deeper understanding of your vehicle and the satisfaction of fixing it with your own hands. We'll show you how to fix the most common culprits: the valve cover gasket, oil filter housing gasket, and the timing chain cover. Each of these repairs requires a different approach, but we'll break them down step by step so you can follow along easily. And the timing chain cover. This one is a bit more involved, but with patience and attention to detail, you can do it. Let's get started. Let's dive right in. First up, the valve cover gasket. This is one of the most common sources of oil leaks in BMWs, and it's relatively easy to fix. The valve cover gasket sits on top of the engine and seals the valve cover to the cylinder head. Over time, the gasket can become brittle and start to leak. If you see oil pooling around the edges of your valve cover, it's time for a change. Grab a socket wrench, torque wrench, and a new gasket. Remove the engine covers, disconnect any wiring or hoses, and take off the valve cover bolts. This might sound daunting, but take it step by step, and you'll get there. If you see oil pooling around the edges of your valve cover, it's a clear sign that the gasket needs to be replaced. This is a common issue, especially in older BMWs, and it's something you can fix yourself with a bit of patience and the right tools. To start, grab a socket wrench, torque wrench, and a new gasket. Begin by removing the engine covers. These are usually held in place by a few bolts or clips, and they should come off easily. Once the covers are off, you'll have a clear view of the valve cover and the surrounding area. Next, disconnect any wiring or hoses that are in the way. This might include spark plug wires, vacuum hoses, or other components. Be sure to label or take pictures of everything you disconnect so you can easily put it back together later. Once everything is out of the way, you can start removing the valve cover bolts. Carefully remove the valve cover bolts. These bolts can be tight, so take your time and use the right size socket to avoid stripping them. Once all the bolts are out, gently lift the valve cover off the engine. You might need to wiggle it a bit to break the seal, but it should come off without too much trouble. With the valve cover off, you can now see the old gasket. Carefully remove it, being sure not to damage the surfaces. Clean the valve cover and the cylinder head thoroughly to remove any old gasket material and oil residue. This will ensure a good seal when you install the new gasket. Place the new gasket in position, making sure it sits properly in the groove. Then, carefully place the valve cover back on the engine and start threading the bolts by hand. Once all the bolts are in place, use a torque wrench to tighten them to the manufacturer's specifications. This is important to ensure a proper seal and to avoid over-tightening, which can damage the gasket or the valve cover. Done. You've successfully replaced the valve cover gasket. Take a moment to admire your work and check for any leaks. If everything looks good, you can reassemble the engine covers and reconnect any wiring or hoses you removed. Congratulations, you've just tackled one of the most common oil leaks in BMWs. Next, the oil filter housing gasket. This gasket seals the oil filter housing to the engine block, and when it fails, it can cause oil to leak down the side of the engine. This is another common issue in BMWs, and it's something you can fix yourself with a bit of effort. If oil is dripping down the side of your engine, this could be the issue. The oil filter housing gasket is located near the top of the engine, and it's responsible for sealing the oil filter housing to the engine block. When this gasket fails, it can cause oil to leak out and run down the side of the engine. To fix this, you'll need to remove the oil filter and unbolt the housing. Start by draining the engine oil to prevent any spills, then remove the oil filter and set it aside. Next, use a socket wrench to remove the bolts that hold the oil filter housing in place. Be careful not to lose any of the bolts or washers, as you'll need them for reassembly. Once the housing is off, you can see the old gasket. Carefully remove it and clean the mating surfaces on both the housing and the engine block. This will ensure a good seal when you install the new gasket. Place the new gasket in position, then reassemble the housing and tighten the bolts to the manufacturer's specifications. Finally, install a new oil filter and refill the engine with oil. Easy peasy. You've just fixed another common oil leak in your BMW. Take a moment to check for any leaks and make sure everything is properly tightened. If everything looks good, you're ready to move on to the next repair. Finally, the timing chain cover gasket. This one's trickier. You'll need to remove several components to get to it. The timing chain cover is located at the front of the engine and covers the timing chain and related components. When the gasket fails, it can cause oil to leak out and create a mess. To access the timing chain cover gasket, you'll need to remove several components, including the serpentine belt, the crankshaft pulley, and possibly the water pump. This can be a bit more involved than the previous repairs, but with patience and attention to detail, you can do it. Once you have access to the timing chain cover, carefully remove the bolts and lift the cover off the engine. Be sure to keep track of the bolts and their locations, as they may be different lengths. With the cover off, you can see the old gasket, remove it and clean the mating surfaces thoroughly. Install the new gasket, then reassemble the cover and tighten the bolts to the manufacturer's specifications. If you're unsure about tackling this repair yourself, a pro might be the way to go. The timing chain cover gasket is a bit more complex than the other repairs, and it requires careful attention to detail. If you're not comfortable with this level of work, it's best to seek the help of a professional mechanic. So there you have it. Fixing oil leaks in your BMW is totally doable. With a bit of knowledge and the right tools, you can tackle these common issues yourself and keep your car running smoothly. Remember to take your time, follow the steps carefully, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Fixing oil leaks in your BMW is totally doable. Like, subscribe, and drop your questions below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your questions below. Thanks for watching, and happy wrenching.